I'm really pleased you've joined this session as we have a fantastic panel with a load of experience in the spa and wellness area. I'd like to welcome our panelists today, Don Genders from Design for Leisure, Claire Way from Spa Strategy, and Justin Sturgis also from Spa Strategy. These panelists and experts, they work across the globe in the wellness sector, mainly focusing on the design of thermal wellness and spas. So I'd like to just ask each of you first if you could give a little bit of a description about yourselves and what you do and the areas that you cover. If I could ask you to kick off first, Claire.
Sure. So what we do at Spa Strategy is we work with projects very much in that early development phase. So we take them through a strategic understanding of where they should be positioned within wellness, within hospitality. We help them understand conceptually what kind of concept is going to be right based on the market that they're looking at working with. And we support them as well through the design process, through reviewing the technical drawings that are coming in through the project team, through partnering with people like yourself, to bring in more of a technical understanding of the thermal spaces as well. And we also support a project through into the pre-opening phase as well. So those are the kind of the four key areas that we focus on. And we've been really fortunate to work on a lot of projects, over 250 projects around the globe, working on a broad range, small urban hospitality projects right up to destination wellness resorts that are, 100% integrated wellness. So we're very, very fortunate and yeah, very lucky.
Fantastic. And just for the listeners, where are you located, Claire?
I am in the UK.
Fantastic. And I'm just going to jump over to Justin because I know Justin also works for Spa Strategy, but he's not in the UK.
Correct. I do the North American projects and some others as well. I also have my own company called Simple Lotus, and so I contract with a number of different entities. I basically do everything that Claire just referenced. My focus, though, is typically on the creative end. So I do a lot of the story, sort of the initial approach, the conceptualization for different spas, wellness centers, hotels and resorts. I do a lot of the story writing and then sort of the fundamental building blocks that the architect and design teams then use to create the facility, and the operation teams use as kind of a foundation or framework for why they are what they are.
Brilliant, thank you. And Don, you're from Design for Leisure.
I am indeed, Erin, yes. And I'm speaking to you today from our London office, but we also have an office in Austin, Texas, in the United States. We've been in this business now for over 30 years, and we specialize in the design and implementation of hydrothermal spa areas. Hydro being the water side, thermal being the thermal side. And we take everything from white space up to the finished article. We have a whole team of designers. You're all based in the UK, but because the vast majority of products we work with are originating in Europe, and so it gives us a much better time zone communication to design from the UK, but virtually all the projects that we design are actually in the USA. We do work elsewhere, but we do not target other markets. And in America, then our team, they're very much involved in the complete implementation of projects as well. So, what we design here will also ultimately get built over there. We tend to build about 80% of the projects that we build. 80% of the projects that we design. And the team over there are fully factory trained in all the European factories to install all of the equipment that we represent as manufacturers reps in the States.
Fantastic. Well, I think we've got a really good cross section here today to be able to talk about what's hot and what's not post-pandemic, or whilst we are still in it, I suppose. But I think there's been quite a lot of changes and shifts into the way that maybe people are bathing and the way that we're designing these days. So I'm just wondering if we can start off with that and what you've been seeing and what advice you could give to people. Just jump in, anybody.
Okay. Well, I mean, what we've seen is in the last 3 years, almost, as we're heading to 2023. I can't believe it, but is that there've been a huge amount of different opinions as to what effect the pandemic was going to have on our industry. And these varied wildly, as of course opinions should do. But obviously, we're beginning to now see what those opinions, because really they were nothing more than predictions, in the beginning of 2020. And of course, with time now, we can see how they've come to reality. And what we have found is that the predictions that everything was going to get smaller and more private and more intimate was being promoted, and it was being promoted largely by people who saw that as a big revenue generator, because instead of giving away a nice big amenity space free of charge to anybody who booked a treatment, or maybe for a small fee just to use the hydrothermal areas, they saw the opportunity to make everything chargeable. And we fought, as a company, we just felt it was incredibly sort of undemocratic, and it was just making an industry that was already looked at by many as being exclusive and unattainable for so many, and by just making locking everything up, making you pay for every damn thing, made it even worse. And I'm absolutely delighted to see that what we were promoting was was larger spaces, so that people feel more comfortable, have got space to share. We could keep them as free for all spaces. We could keep them as non-chargeable individual facilities. And that's really coming about in an enormous way, particularly in the United States, where we're seeing all of a sudden an explosion of business in that area.
Justin or Claire, are you also seeing this?
Yeah, absolutely. I would echo what Don said. One of the things too that I see driving this is that one of the benefits of the pandemic was that people disconnected their persona from their work in a large way. And so while we were already trending toward people looking internally and kind of looking at their health and ways to better themselves and those types of things, this just amplified it. We were stuck, many people alone or in small groups or small families for a long time. And so you had to sort of look inward. And I think the ability to disassociate from the work personality that we all had before, and now to understand that it's more holistic, that it's all connected and that's not compartmentalized, that's driving some of the usage patterns, some of the design that will occur. And just what Don said, people are more social in this way. So all of those kind of, and I would echo with him, they were predictions with an agenda that things would be more intimate or smaller or kind of personalized. While there's still some of that, really what's happening now is a very social movement. I think the pent up frustration from being, segregated from people has kind of frothed over, and now you have this whole sort of movement. That's why people are not necessarily returning back to the office and things like that, because we're starting to see that everything's connected and you can't compartmentalize the way that we used to talk about it, work-life balance and that type of thing. There's no such thing. It's all one person, so it's all one life, and we're starting to see that, and I think that'll permeate the design and the way that spas and wellness centers and fitness centers are used going forward.
I guess there are still locations where a smaller space is obviously going to be more beneficial or suit their requirements more, especially if they don't have a lot of space. Maybe your smaller urban retreats where they want to try and get more different experiences into a smaller space. But I've certainly seen that these experiential saunas like the Ufgas and things like that are certainly taking hold of, the trend side of things at the moment, and they're a wonderful thing to be a part of, and being able to heighten your experience and enjoy it with others is certainly something special. So I see the benefit, and certainly going to spas with others and sharing that experience.
Yeah, I mean, I'd piggyback on that. I'm a massive fan of Ufgas. I think it's one of the best experiences to have. I mean, we're seeing, just kind of picking up on a couple of points that the guys have mentioned, we're seeing, yes, kind of more shared spaces, very much space dependent. So where we're working, obviously, in Europe, possibly a little bit more at the moment, some of the projects we're working with, spaces not as luxurious as we would like it to be. But we are still seeing very much that the whole hydrothermal circuit being included within the general access. And also we're seeing where it's getting moved. So you might have, say, for instance, a sauna in a different location, possibly within more of the pool area. And then within the spa, you've got different cabins that are supporting the treatment rooms, and that's becoming that revenue generating space. We are seeing a bit of a split happening as well sometimes. And we're seeing lots of talk about different ways to kind of monetize the spaces as well, through things like bringing in afghus and other different techniques.
I think that what you just said there, Claire, was, I think, look, we've got to understand, that the spas are businesses, and people have got to monetize, as much as they possibly can. But of course, one of the things that Erin mentioned about Aufguss, which is a incredibly popular thing at the moment, and it's a really hot topic wherever you look. I mean, the World Championships are just finished in the Netherlands now last month, and that was an enormous success, I'm told. But the fact is that it also means that it's turning the spa into a social space, and it's no longer sort of worried about breaking the silence. You walk into a sauna or anything else, because with what's going on in a sauna and Aufguss thing, nobody's breaking any silence. But the other side of it is, of course, that it's giving operators the opportunity. One, we're getting away from the gender segregated sort of, single sex facilities. It's all unisex, it's all there. And particularly in America, where gender segregation was an incredibly difficult point to overcome for the last nearly 20 years that we've worked there. And it's been an uphill battle, but the barriers have all just suddenly fallen down. But the big thing is that, we're seeing ways to give people a return on the investment within the hydrothermal area, which was always incredibly hard to monetize for them. But by giving, if you build something that people appreciate and see the value in, one, that they don't mind paying a daily fee to come and use it, and secondly, then if you then invest even more money in an event sauna where you're putting on the Aufguss performances and all the rest of it, well, everywhere that provides Aufguss performances invariably charges extra for them. So it's giving another stream of revenue to come in from your great big friendly, sociable, open spa area.
And I guess if we kind of tie this into the halotherapy side of things, this is where the larger rooms where you could be doing the sound baths and the meditation or Pilates and things like that. and adding that extra something into that space at a certain time and creating that unique experience beyond just the standard salt sessions that perhaps you might offer during the day. And then of an evening, there might be a sound bath or healing something to generate that additional revenue and excitement about the facility as well, and getting people maybe that would not normally have come in.
Yeah, and we're seeing that as well with, you know, doing kind of breathing sessions as well, or even meditation sessions, and incorporating that into the space, which is very, very popular.
I think that we've got to get, you know, we've got to encourage, you know, spa management, spa directors to think outside the box as well. Now, I mean, you know, in the Vienna Hotel in Miami, I mean, we've got the biggest hammam in North America, and you know, and it is enormous. I mean, you know, it's 8 meters, 24 feet, you know, diameter, and you know, it's 7 feet, you know, 7 meters, 20 odd feet in height, and it's spectacular. It's grand. It's amazing, but it's a very big space, you know, to fill in, you know, within a relatively small spa area, in a hotel with 200 odd rooms, but the spa director there has, you know, she uses it for yoga, she uses it for chanting, she uses it for meditation, and you know, that beautiful warm climate, you know, because it's, you know, it's not a steam room, you know, so you don't have clouds of steam and everything else in that room. So you've got this absolutely beautiful climate in which to do all these things, and something that we never knew when we designed it was how acoustically brilliant the thing was going to be. And is amazing for, you know, for chanting, singing, you know, sound bowls in there, you know, singing bowls and all the rest of it. I mean, it fills the whole room. So it was a really clever spa director thinking, what can I do?
Oh, I think we just lost Don there, but
With this space, how can I monetize this with classes in a hammam?
Lost Don there. Yeah, it's a great idea as well, and you know, these maybe larger, more special rooms could all of a sudden become the heart of the spa. So you could choose one specific room to make that big space, and that is where everyone kind of comes back to, or where it all kind of circulates around, and it becomes a real hub and heart of your spa. I wanted to touch back on one thing about the communal spaces. How far are you finding those extend? Are they going back into the changing spaces and things like that as well?
I think it really depends on the location. I mean, we've talked a lot about international, and when you talk about the US, some of those hangups that Don was alluding to, where we're trying to still overcome sort of the gender specificity notions and things. It's a little more difficult here to permeate the entire facility with that type of setup. But I think it's, again, going back to what I said earlier, the mindset is shifting. And so we are starting to see, or we're starting to promote that. Not every owner to this point is open to it or receptive to that change. But certainly going to a more Euro or Asian model where things are a little more mixed and a little more open-minded in some cases. I think in the US it is starting to shift, and not to be US centric, but a lot of times the things that we adopt in this country have a way of kind of influencing other areas, even if they started the idea to begin with. So it's a unique kind of cyclical type deal. But yeah, I do think that we're headed that direction if we're not there yet.
I mean, that's a nice tie back to halotherapy, actually. It originated in Poland, but right. America is definitely leading the way.
I think just adding to what Justin has said as well, I think it depends on the property that you're working within. So if you've got a strong residential component, I think there is more of an argument towards having that gender specific. Now, it depends on your total footprint, but whether you've got gender specific, and then you have that communal component to it as well. Because I think when you've got that residential side, if you have people that are creating residential communities, they don't necessarily want to always have that co-gender hydrothermal. They feel a little bit more exposed, a little more uncomfortable potentially. So there is an element of case by case within that. But I remember, Justin, I remember you and I having this conversation 2 years ago about how North America was moving slowly towards that more kind of co-gender space as well for the thermal cabins in particular.
Yeah, I would add one more thing that I think part of what's driving this that maybe people aren't recognizing is the younger generation and the social format that they live within. They're exposed all the time to one another. They're communal by nature, whether it's digitally or in person. The boundaries are no longer there. They show everything. They're exposing themselves in every way, physically, emotionally, mentally. And so the opportunity is there because they don't have those previous notions and kind of constraints. The trick is right now we're moving from that boomer generation who's actually funding all of this development, right? They're the ones that are going to these facilities and spending the money. And now we're shifting into this latest generation. Once that happens, I think it'll be the inverse. We'll be hard pressed to find personal spaces and private zones because they are so communal. I mean, I watch my own children and they're like that, and they're both in their 20s, and everything's exposed. It's all out there. So I think that's kind of a hidden layer that will start to affect everything that we do.
Oh dear, I think we've just lost Don. Hopefully he'll join back in. I think that probably leads quite nicely onto storytelling through experience and the client journey as well. Do you see that having shifted? And also, how important is it to create a journey or a story as people go into the spa?
Well, this is what I do. This is what I've done for about 36 years now. And I think it's a huge shift. We've talked for a couple of decades about authenticity, but I think that's really, really important at this stage in our society. People, especially that younger generation, they actually take pride in rooting out falsehoods and inauthenticity, and greenwashing and all of this type of thing. They spend a lot of their time vetting and verifying the story, if you will. And so what I've seen, especially over the last maybe 5-6 years, is when especially like when Claire and I work together, when we're starting to develop a spa or a wellness center or what have you, we're starting from a very granular place so that there's a backstory. And that didn't always occur before. Sometimes you just kind of came in and themed things. And that for many, many years, especially through the end of the 90s and all the 2000s, everything was themed, right? You just kind of picked some iconic pieces and you put them out there. And then that was that type of spa, whatever it was. And that doesn't fly anymore because they dig now. And so you have to have that backstory, the why, how did you get to that point, and have things that are a little more rooted, especially culturally or to the location or to the premise, whatever it might be. And so some of those things like not to call them out, but the Marilyn Monroe spas, when those started, I mean, that was like a Disney theme. There was nothing to that where they could have really done a backstory and made it really authentic, and they might still be thriving. So I do think that story has become extremely important. And all of these components, like you've mentioned halotherapy a couple of times, the thermal circuits, those all weave into this. And so, to me, this is like my golden era. I love this time.
And that story needs to start right from not even when they're walking in the door, but as they're arriving, or even before that, when they're going onto the website, when they're viewing it. So
right. It starts with the team behind it. So there's pieces that the staff knows that the guest will never know, but it informs how they deliver.
Yeah. And it's also really important that the staff who are there when the clients come in understand the story and can continue that story for them, and take them on that journey. I think it's a lovely way to really give someone an experience that is special and potentially will have them coming back again, but also that they will share it with others. And that's what we really want people to be doing, is just sharing their experience and saying, oh, you've got to go and try this. It's incredible. We did this, we did that. And that's how we can generate more people to come back into the spas again, by creating those experiences and making them special and unique.
And what we're finding as well is that owners and developers are really, where it's always been quite a sell to get them understanding how early in the development process that needs to come in. Now they're understanding that a lot better, and also understanding that concept story flows into design. Like how is that concept nugget, that piece that doesn't matter what the property, what this spa is offering on the menu in 20 years time, that's going to change, but that concept nugget needs to be able to flow throughout that whole timeline. So it needs to inform part of the design. It needs to inform the guest journey at every single touch point, and it has to be granular, it has to have layers to it, and it has to be something that can evolve. You know, look at where we were 20 years ago to where we are now. So it's you know, it's something that Justin does particularly well, and it's not easy. It's interesting, you know, we've been adding people to the team recently in talking with people about how do they create that. It's something that really, until you start diving into it, it's a very difficult process to get really integrated into everything that you're doing. But it is so key. The properties that do that well succeed, and are great properties from the guest experience throughout.
And they have longevity.
And the longevity, absolutely, the longevity. You know, they're basically that brand that carries through.
So it's not choosing a trend or a gimmick. It's about making sure you get the roots right, that it will carry on forever.
I mean, you would have
it's an anchor.
Well, the number of Asian spas that popped up in the 90s and the 2000s in Europe was, you know, crazy. And it was just everything was Asian spa because it was that big trend going forwards. But it you know, you can't just anchor something just on something that's, you know, if it was you know, trying to pull on one of the old traditional therapies, that's great, but there needs to be more to it than that.
So thanks for jumping back in, Don. Sorry we lost you there.
He froze on me.
So. We can't quite hear you very well at the moment, Don. I don't know if you're able to turn your mic up at all. While Don's doing that, one of my last questions I had was, what are your top tips for anyone looking to develop a new spa or to refresh an old one that will help meet both today's demands and the future ones?
Ooh, good question.
Well, I'll start by saying that what both Claire and Dawn said earlier, they didn't say it directly, but what they described was multi-use, right? Making flexibility in the design, specifically for the new space, is a little harder for an existing space. But when you're designing from scratch, as Don was talking about with that hammam, you know, he may not have imagined all the things that it was used for, but clearly the design was effective because it was able to be used for multiple things. And so as we start looking at how spaces are designed and how they evolve, it's sort of leaving those areas somewhat open-ended so that they're not defined as one thing. I think we've certainly moved away, in large part in this country anyway, from those dedicated wet rooms where we had Vichy showers and Swiss showers and things, because it tied up that space. Not that that's not that those are bad services, but I think they need to be designed in a way that they move out of the way when they need to, so that you can use the space for other things. And then a little further beyond that is the interaction between the various spaces as well, and how you move from one space to another. Claire talked about, sometimes there's these shifts where we're doing maybe the same type of experience, a sauna in one space and another sauna in another space, for very different uses and different audiences. I think all of those types of things, I know Dawn's work, I've seen a lot of it, and I think that they're very good about anticipating not only the flow, but how things interact. And so there's a lot of that where you have the ability to kind of think about the future a bit, not just what will this look like if I need to renovate in 5-10 years, but over the next 5-10 years, how many things can we do in these spaces? What types of finishes are we selecting? And then tying all of that back to what we were just talking about in that story. And that's for new builds. I think for adaptations, it's really much more case by case.
Yeah, and I'd agree with that. I'd also, just picking up on the flow piece in particular, which doesn't feel like it's particularly a new thing to be looking at, but the number of properties that we see that the flow doesn't work for the operation, and it doesn't work for the guest experience as well. So really, that shouldn't happen nowadays. So really getting a good understanding of what is that path that your different users are taking. And, don't forget about the staff. Yes, the guest is key, but the staff have to deliver this. You have to be able to get your linens through. I mean, none of this is sexy and exciting, but you have to be able to get your linens through from point A to point B. The number of spas that we look at that don't have sufficient storage space, or don't have any storage space. Again, not particularly exciting, but these are the fundamental points that if you don't get this right, it doesn't matter what else you do. If you don't get those adjacencies of space right, if you don't get the way that you're going to move the guests or move the staff through the space right, it's never going to create a great experience, a guest experience. So it's like I said, it's not sexy, but it is 101. It's really important.
Well, I think it also, the trouble is, you're quite right. And look, I think it is an eternal battle. I mean, in getting the right number of space, the right amount of space to make the whole thing function. And look, the problem is, I can see, the ownership argument that, they want to minimize the non-revenue generating space. But I mean, we've got a project we're looking at the moment. In fact, we're appointed on it, and its concept has already been done. And we've got 13 pools and 5 private wet spa suites, and there is enough mechanical space for 3 pools. And there's no, and all the mechanical space is in one place. So, we're sort of, we're 50 meters, 150 feet from a steam room, and steam pipes can't be that. A multitude of things. I mean, going back to what Claire's point just now about linens, okay, if you can't move the linen around during the operating day, well, you've got to make sure you've got enough space to store all your dirty linens to get it out, every night. And and again, we've got no linen storage, we've got no, it's just, and the trouble is, you come into these projects and the first thing you do is rain on someone's parade. Because you're having this drawing presented to you invariably by the person that's originated the damn thing.
Yeah.
And then you've got to sit there and say, yeah, it's really pretty, but of course it's in the real world it's not going to work.
No, and what I really was waiting for someone to say is my top tip is to get a spa consultant on board right at the start to make sure that all these things are catered for. specifically the plant allocation spaces and the back of house flow, and how it's going to be maintained in the future, because these are all the ones that I come up with all the time. And as you say, you've got to rain on someone else's parade at some point if it's left too long. And then there's a whole load of reworking. It takes a whole lot more time. And it's better to get that all done and sorted out in the first place by space allocation and just thinking it all through. But I think those are all such valid points, and I hope that those out there listening can.
Well, Erin, sorry, just one point you just said there, that about the spa consultant, because they've been hired, and often they're hired before we get involved. But the thing is, the spa consultant, and if they don't do their job right, they're doing the business plan. Okay, they're telling the owners and investors, okay, how many gazillions of dollars they're going to make in profit next year. And the fact is that when we suddenly come along and just say, well, actually, you better downgrade all those profit forecasts because you've just lost 3 treatment rooms. Because it's going to be in mechanical spaces,
Yes, okay. So, I'll rephrase that then. You need your spa consultant with your thermal consultant on board.
Thank you very much.
Yes, I was kind of putting us under the same umbrella. Yes, we all work very well together, by the way.
That's right.
Yeah. No, and it is definitely the way forward. Yeah, for sure.
And most of our work comes through spa consultants. We either work as sub-consultants to them, or they bring us in at the same time, and we get appointed by the owners or by the architects or whatever it may be. But no, I mean, the bad old days, sort of 15, 20 years ago, when spa consultants would tell an owner they could do everything. And then couldn't. I mean, that created a niche in the market in which our design services, we fitted in, and we sit and work very, very comfortably with the operational spa consultancy world, and it's a very harmonious existence we have with them.
One last question before we wrap it up. What is your favorite spa?
We can't say that.
We can. Yes, we can.
I'm going to say one that's not in a hotel so I don't get in trouble.
Okay, what's your favorite spa experience? How's that?
I think I've said.
Wow. Well, that's quite different. I'll start because mine is an oddball. I had a spa experience in Mexico near Tulum in a small village. It was not a spa facility at all. It was a shack, literally a shack with mosquito netting. It was filthy, and the grounds were filthy. It was in a really bad neighborhood, but it was the best service I've ever received in my life. It was a bunch of there was a woman from the US who had moved down there and started this place, and she basically opened up this wellness retreat to help single mothers in Mexico. And so all of the therapists were single mothers. They all lived on the property with all their kids. So you had kids and chickens and things running around right outside the treatment room. But the intention that therapist gave, and all of these little nuanced moments and things, even though she couldn't speak lick English, it was really profound. It was incredible. And to look at it from the outside, I would have never, I thought it was going to be the worst experience of my life. And it turned out to be the most profound. And it wasn't even in a facility.
Fantastic. Don't judge a book by its cover, huh?
Right.
Sure.
Well, my favorite spa service or spa treatment is actually Watsu. Somebody asked me before, could you fall? I could fall asleep on any massage table, anytime, any day, any place. But I have fallen asleep in during a Watsu session. That's a serious level of of relaxation, and of course trusting that therapist
Yeah.
who who is of course controlling you in a pool of water. And yeah, I'm very confident in water, so that I think that must help, because I've got no inbuilt psychological fear of it whatsoever. But to me that's and it's still quite a rarity.
Can you just share for people who are listening who might not know what a WHA is?
Well, it's you and the therapist at a pool, and yeah. And a few bits of floaty stuff that they sort of bolt on, and you were just led through the water. I mean, it's I don't know. I mean,
it's like assisted yoga with shiatsu mixed in.
Yeah, it is. It's sort of, it's led
Yeah.
hydrotherapy. I mean, you're being moved through the water in such an incredibly sort of dreamy and relaxing way. I mean, it is fantastic. But perhaps it's because it's such a difficult thing to explain. It's how do you put that in a spa menu? But I mean, but the amount of WHA pools that I come across, I'm seeing more and more coming into new projects now, as we're seeing more and more water experiences coming into projects now. We're seeing multiple pools, which is really refreshing. And with multiple temperatures. And so I think that's a really exciting development we're seeing.
And I'll plug 10,000 Waves in Santa Fe, New Mexico as one of the best WHA services I've ever had. And I've had probably 30 there, so it's quite nice.
Yeah, one and only in Campus St. Lucas was mine.
Oh, so now we're throwing names.
No, we're still talking about the treatment, not the best spa. Yeah.
Claire, what's yours?
Yeah, for me, I had a treatment called Tula Yoga. It's by a guy called Luca, and it was a 2-hour treatment, and it was the way he brought everything together. So it's his own service. He's kind of coined this. And it includes different massage techniques, but also kind of similar to a little bit of what you get with WHA, whereby with WHA you kind of you're moving through the water, but then also there's this kind of real trust and close contact with the provider as well. So I'm not explaining this very well, but he at the end he basically is kind of cradling you, and it's going to sound weird. Yeah, upside down at one point, balanced on his feet. You're also, I should add, you're also naked, right? I'm really putting myself out here now. And it's quite amazing how he installs this confidence and comfort with you and kind of takes you through into this relaxed state to the end, where basically you're wrapped in a blanket and he's cradling you. So there's a lot of trust, and I think probably what we're all talking about is those really phenomenal providers that are out there. But I will give a plug. It's not a spa, but there is a place in Amsterdam called Spa Zuvier, but basically it's a collection of different thermal experiences and a pool as well. And I have to say, I'm a bit of a sucker for one of the larger complexes with multiple saunas, and I can just spend the entire day going from one to the other, doing all my little circuits. And those are the places whereby you can go into the relaxation room. There can be 20 people, they're all talking, and I'll curl up in a ball and fall asleep. And I've had some of the best power sleeps in those places. Yeah.
No, fantastic. Well, that was a great insight into into what you all like. Well, I think this has been an absolutely brilliant discussion, and I'm pretty confident that the people out there listening have have hopefully got some really good takeaways, ideas and inspiration, or been inspired to get a spa consultant or thermal heat experience consultant on board early. But I'd like to just thank you again for joining today and sharing this all with us. Thank you.
Okay, thanks everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Great
you.
week.
Bye-bye.